Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party is losing one stronghold after another. After losing Toronto, it's lost a special election in Montreal. The Liberals have been in power in Canada for almost 9 years now. The humiliating defeats show that support for Liberals has evaporated even in their last few strongholds before the next general election, which must take place by October 2025 but is likely to take place earlier. So why are Liberals losing support? And why has Justin Trudeau become so unpopular in Canada? Let's find out. When Justin Trudeau was first elected Prime Minister in 2015, his image among young Canadians was mostly positive, especially among younger progressive voters. He was seen as a charismatic and modern figure, in contrast to the conservative Stephen Harper, who had been in power for almost a decade. Trudeau promised to advance issues dear to young Canadians, such as gender equality, LGBT rights, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and the fight against climate change. He had inherited some of the popularity of his father and former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. But after 9 years in power, those days of popularity are behind him. Now, the youth in Canada are more concerned about the high cost of living than the progressive policies of a few years ago. A series of scandals and controversies have made Trudeau unpopular. In 2019, his image started declining when he was accused of intervening in a court case to protect a Canadian company. The scandal exploded when Jody Wilson, Trudeau's former Minister for Justice, alleged that she felt pressured by Trudeau's inner circle to go easy on an engineering firm accused of corruption. The controversy was seen as abuse of power. It contradicted the Prime Minister's promise of greater transparency in governance, and this eroded public trust in Trudeau. Trudeau's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic hurt his image too. He took strong measures that were criticized. He forced federal employees, travelers on trains, planes and ships to be vaccinated. Some Canadians saw it as interference with their freedom. It all started when truckers started a series of protests against the vaccination requirements for crossing the US border. Truckers were then joined by thousands of demonstrators, and those protests lasted for weeks. The Canadian government decided to use the Emergency Act to seize the bank accounts of those involved in those protests. Such measures were never used before. What contributed further to Trudeau's unpopularity was inflation, a significant rise in cost of living, growing unaffordability of houses, and a rental housing shortage crisis. As more immigrants arrived in Canada, prices of houses and rents spiked. But it must be noted here that immigrants contributed significantly to Canadian economy by boosting it, easing labor shortages, helping Canada avert a recession, and interest rate hikes by its central bank. So this shows the failure of Trudeau's government to enhance infrastructure and services at the pace that was needed. His government is now trying to curtail immigration, study and work permits. Heavy spending by his government during the pandemic led to a spike in inflation too. Opinion polls bear out Trudeau's unpopularity. Right-wing opposition candidate Pierre Poilievre is now the front-runner to win the next general election.